Hey guys, what's going on? I'm Aish, and in this video I'm just going to be talking to you about autism, borderline personality disorder, misdiagnosis, mental health, all that kind of crap. Because I wish there was a video like this. I wish there had been a video like this a few months ago, basically, or a year ago even. And I mean, if there is, I didn't find it, I'm sorry. But yeah, like I thought I would talk about it. I tried to film this video yesterday and I had a meltdown, so I feel like a bit nervous to film this video. I'm also trying to not consciously like mask myself, because I think the reason I got so burnt out doing YouTube is because I was just talking like a robot and not talking like myself, because how I talk is quite broken and just not very not very proper. Like, that's the only word I can think of. And it makes me really hate doing YouTube videos, and I actually want to make this content and I want to make other content and stuff as well. So yeah, if I seem a bit different, I am just trying to not be myself, if that makes sense. But yeah, I don't really know where to start with this. So I'm just gonna go on the whole kind of train of like my experience of mental health and stuff like that. In hopefully a summary, but you know, with me you never know. So I made a sticky note because my friend told me to have bullet points. My first experience of like mental health issues were probably like as a young child. I think I'm probably around 4 or 5, the age I'm kind of thinking that I can like consciously remember, and I just remember kind of not wanting to be born, not wanting to be there. When people ask me about sadness and stuff, that's the memory I think of that makes me feel like there's always kind of been something. And it's not like I had a like hugely traumatic early years or something, like no one did anything to me or anything like that. But you know, that was like, looking back in therapy over the years, that's kind of been my pinpoint of the first thing I can think of not wanting to do that. And maybe that's a completely normal thing, I don't know. So yeah, bearing in mind that this is a video on what the title says it is, whatever I decide to make the title, and not an autism in childhood, and not an autism traits in childhood video, I am going to give you a quick summary of my mental health history. So if we're being, I guess, real and summarizing, which I'm really bad at, my mental health history starts, like the I guess interesting stuff starts when I'm like 13, 14, 12, something. And that's kind of like eating issues. I'd always been a fussy eater, but I just started, you know, really watching my weight, only eating certain foods, being very conscious of my weight and wanting to look a certain way. And even as I'm talking about it, I'm starting to feel more self-conscious, because I have put on weight and I'm trying to just, you know, deal with that. But yeah, so I had all those issues and stuff, and you know, I had a real, like, for me, a need to control something in my life. But I got some private counselling, because for me, going to official places about things was scary, and it seemed scary. And you know, I got depressed, or maybe I was depressed then, I don't really remember. I can probably look back and see, but yeah, so I had suffered with depression as well as a young teenager, and you know, things kind of started to get difficult at home, and I was groomed online by some guy And then I ended up more depressed and I went to CAMS. But a few months after that I moved out, and a few months after that I was raped, and a few months after that I got in a relationship. So even though I had been struggling being moved out, I was able to kind of compensate in some ways for like stuff, I guess. And this was like, it wasn't my first relationship, but it was like my first long-term relationship. Where am I? Yeah, so eventually I developed anxiety. A lot of it was to do with just the situation I was in. But I also had like anxiety about going out and doing things, and I've just completely like lost my thoughts in my head are just completely not in sync right now with what I'm trying to do here. Let me like yeah, so anxiety. This relationship kind of became an on and off relationship, and it kind of featured for a lot of my life. And at a point when it broke down in 2015, I started experiencing worse mental health symptoms, and basically through research and things like that, it seemed likely that what I was experiencing was BPD, borderline personality disorder. So this was like 2015 that I discovered what this was, because I knew what depression and anxiety were, and I felt like, no, like this doesn't feel like that. So yeah, all of this time I've been kind of like, not scared, but apprehensive about going and using like NHS services for mental health. I apologise, my cat is trying to cheat food out of her food machine. At one point when I was in college, I went to my GP because I thought I had ADHD and I was really struggling. And they basically referred me to some place who came to the conclusion that because of my good school grades and academic performance, I couldn't have ADHD. So they decided they thought I was bipolar. But I knew what bipolar was because I had experience with bipolar people, and I knew I wasn't bipolar. But yeah, so I've been kind of apprehensive about this whole stuff. So I don't seek any kind of diagnosis for BPD. I just think, okay, this seems like what's going on, and I just kind of use it as a way to describe to people how I feel. And then, you know, shit just gets worse. Like the on and off relationship goes on and on. And you know, I start struggling with things at work and in various jobs, like being able to kind of maintain a professional persona. I did meet a girl actually in a job who really kind of changed how I thought about BPD, and kind of influenced me to, rather than just think, okay, this is how I feel, like look into it more. And that was the Chronic Iconic on Instagram, if you want to know. She's lovely, but yeah, she made me look into BPD and just my mind more, and made me actually look at those things. So I kind of read some books, and I still kind of felt like this identified with how I felt. I couldn't think of a word. But yeah, so that was the case. This is the case. I then kind of had like, I mean, in the only way I can describe it is a mental breakdown, but I guess looking back, I think there is another word, but I'm trying to make this video like a catch-up video, and we're not there yet. So yeah, so in 2019, I after having issues trying to get seen on the NHS, like I had gone there and they basically told me I was just an overgrown brat. So like I think that was in like 2018 I went there. And 2017 was the conversation that made me, or maybe that was 2008. No, that was 2018 too. So it was 2018. I started to look at BPD a bit different and actually think about learning about it. And then I thought, okay, I need to get help. And yeah, so I actually got my mum to help me look into stuff, but everything was making me anxious, and she tried her best to do as a parent would, to help me in the situation as she thought a parent should, which I can see now in hindsight, and even acknowledging on camera kind of makes me feel a bit like an idiot, but you know, I didn't see that at the time. And you know, I got frustrated, so I ended up getting my dad to help me go privately, because I just didn't feel capable of trying to do that myself, even as I think I was 24 at that point in 2019. So I just didn't feel I can do that. Like I just how so I saw a private psychiatrist, and she had like a rundown of my history, like all the trauma and things that have happened, trauma that has happened. So I ended up going to see a private psychiatrist, and she basically had like a history of, you know, what happened in my life, because there was a lot of things in my life that I hadn't really disclosed to people, and I hadn't really been accepting of myself, and stuff like that. So yeah, I saw this psychiatrist, and she then and there kind of diagnosed me with BPD. I think we spent maybe an hour and a half talking. She spoke to my dad a bit too, and you know, she already, as I said, she had the history, and it didn't seem odd to me that she diagnosed me so quickly, because I felt like on paper I do kind of did fit the bill, I guess, in terms of like symptomology. But that was life. And then I think someone also offered me an NHS appointment around this point, but I think I was apprehensive about going to it. But eventually psychiatrist, they didn't have space to do DBT to accommodate my schedule, so I went to Mind Reframed, and I got myself some DBT, which was really helpful. And I do have another video about that, and I do want to make more videos about that maybe, but that's not what this video is about. But if you're looking for DBT, I totally recommend them, guys. So I did DBT, and it seemed like things started slowly improving. Like I felt I understood things a little bit more, and I had some strategies and, you know, stuff like that. And then, so we're still in 2019 right now. And then I think it was that year that I went and saw the NHS people, and they basically said to me that, you know, it's just ADHD, it's not BPD and all of that, and they like didn't feel that my history matched up with the history you should have with BPD or something like that. Sorry, I'm like looking over here because over here is interesting and over here is like really bright. So I'm doing DBT, and it's kind of helping, and this woman is saying, you know, I'm not borderline, and I'm like, I don't get it. In this time, I also, I think I had an opinion from an old therapist just to get her opinion, and she was like OCD, and to me that didn't fit either. And, you know, even looking at what OCD actually is rather than what people think it is, it just didn't fit. So I was just like, you know, why do these these people don't think I'm borderline. Like, bear in mind, I'd already gone to the NHS before, and even though I had a bad experience, they knew I was there because I thought I was borderline, and they didn't diagnose me with BPD. So that always kind of stuck in my head. I don't think it was until I watched Atypical that I kind of thought about autism as what autism actually is. My idea of autism was the stereotype. But yeah, and I saw things that I could draw parallels to my behaviour, and I felt like, you know, the help Sam gets with certain things, I felt like that was what I needed, and I didn't have that, and I felt stupid to need that, because why do I need that? Why do I need, like, you know, like a bit of extra help with some things? Then I know obviously Sam is a lot younger than I am even, but I do still feel like I need that help with some things. The end of 2019 also, then I think, I, maybe from the Atypical thing, I started watching videos by Tony Attwood on Asperger's in girls, and I was like, this makes so much sense, because even though I had the BPD diagnosis and DBT was helping me, I felt like I was just still like I just still couldn't, basically. I just can't even. And I didn't know why, and I was like, well, if it's BPD, and that's a thing because of all this, why have I always felt different? And stuff like that. So I started kind of questioning it and thinking about autism. I showed my parents the videos, and they are very good videos, and I will link them down below. And with this kind of like information, we contacted someone about getting assessed for ASD, and they explained it was a very long process, etc, etc, and this was doing it privately because, again, I was reluctant to deal with the NHS because of the experience I'd had being called an overgrown brat. Oh no, wait, he didn't actually call me an overgrown brat, he called me an overgrown teenager. So I was reluctant to use the NHS, so I was, you know, we spoke to this lady about private assessment and stuff, but then I think, you know, things were kind of on the up. I was curious, but I hadn't really, it wasn't at the front of my mind. And then the pandemic happened. And the pandemic for me, like it has for kind of everyone, has been like, you know, set out a variety of challenges. Like, you know, at first I quite liked it because I could just be alone, I could just recover from being social and just rest, and just, it was great. Like, I didn't have to work, but I was still making money because I sell online, so it was fine. But then, you know, it kind of went downhill, and things started happening in my life on top of the pandemic, and with everything together, I just basically couldn't cope, and I would say I became a mess. And it was around this point that I said to my brother, so this is like around, I think, November, Christmas, I said to my little brother that, you know, I'm just going to do a private ASD assessment, but I forgot I said this. Now I remember I said this, but I just thought, you know, I feel like there's, like, I just felt like there's something going on. But yeah, and then I sort of forgot about that, kind of went with the fuck it attitude of, like, you know, being, I guess what I would have described as being stereotypically borderline, just being impulsive, doing what I wanted to do, and just not really caring. But yeah, there was still like stress going on in my life. Like, this is before this lockdown, so, you know, it was just messy. And then I was in a therapy session, and I was using the word borderline or talking about BPD, or using basically borderline personality disorder terminology. My therapist was asking me, you know, why I was doing that. And I was just like, well, I don't know how else to describe it. Like, that's how I've been taught to describe it in DBT. That's how I've, you know, been taught to describe things in general, like that's how I've become accustomed to describe it, because I've become accustomed to identifying as borderline because I thought that was what was wrong with me, or, you know, like going on in my head. And then she basically said to me that, you know, I don't think your symptoms align with borderline personality disorder. I think your symptoms align with ASD. And I just wasn't really ready to hear that or expecting that. Because autism was just the last thing on my mind at that point. I was just in my fuck it mode. And I thought that was a very kind of BPD thing. And it's like, I don't think obviously I think that issues aren't kind of under like causing the fuck it mode. Like, it makes sense looking back. But yeah, so I just wasn't ready to hear that, and I was just a bit like, and it should be like known now that the person, my therapist, is the person who would have done the ASD assessment when I was looking to go privately. So she has experience of borderline personality disorder and autism spectrum disorder. I couldn't even fucking remember what the fucking word was. That's terrible. But yeah, so I really should look at the camera. I think what was most shocking to me is that I had always suspected I had ASD with BPD. I had never kind of considered the fact that I might just be autistic. And it just wasn't something that crossed my mind. I knew there was a lot of crossover, but for me, the BPD was the definite one. Because I had the diagnosis. So, yeah, I didn't really understand this at first, and I didn't really fit with it. And this was like right before Christmas. So over the next few weeks, I like researched. I didn't tell my family, because even though like I felt really validated, because not only had she validated what I suspected, but like she did it. It's not like I'd gone to her saying that, like I had with the psychiatrist with BPD, because you're paying a private psychiatrist, so you know, they might think you'll just want the diagnosis and just slap it on you. So yeah, like it felt kind of like she genuinely thinks this, and it just kind of shocked me, because I hadn't been seeing her too long, and although she knew like bits of my history, like it just to know, and like for her to still, so this was in December, and her still now in February still think the same thing. And you know, now she's explained to me why she doesn't think certain things are like borderline like things, they're autism things, and I can understand that more. But it's an experience, and I'm really sorry that this video telling you about it has been so long. But the reason why is because I basically want to be able to make content on autism and stuff like that, because now my therapist, as I said, the person who would have assessed me anyway, like I've been referred to screen. I've got a really itchy ear. I've been referred to so blah, blah, blah. Okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm getting ahead of myself. But yeah, so now like I've done a screening, and that was indicative of ASD, and I have been referred to the Maudsley because there's no adult autism stuff in my borough, which I don't understand. My borough doesn't have a lot of stuff. Like when I needed a Hep B jab, I couldn't get a Hep B jab for occupational health. Like even if I paid for it, they just couldn't do it for me. And it seems like everyone else's borough has that kind of stuff. But yeah, so there's no adult autism services. There's no adult ADHD services either. I don't think there was any DBT services either. So, you know, that's just the way it is. So I've had a screening. I've been referred to the Maudsley. I've been referred for a psychiatry review on the NHS. But these things, like the review, I imagine will take a few months. And the Maudsley, I think I'm looking at like a couple of years, 18 months. So that's all going to take time. In the meantime, my therapist wants me to look at things from an autistic perspective rather than a borderline one. Rather than a borderline one. And that's been interesting because the more I research autism, which is kind of what I was supposed to do, and just like adapt my life to be more livable with autism, does that make sense? So yeah, while I do all that stuff, the more I learn about autism, the more I realize, like, okay, this is a real thing. I am autistic. And it's for me, it's been really validating because I've always felt different, and I've always felt like there's something a bit just literally just different in the head, and there is. And it just makes so much sense to me. Like, I feel kind of frustrated that no one saw it. Like, when I look back at my childhood, I struggle to understand how someone didn't realize that I was autistic, or that there was something going on. But then I have to remind myself that the times are really different, and even now, like, people are only, like, the DSM is still based, I believe, on male presentation of autism, and autism in girls is like a big thing that's missed and misdiagnosed, and one of the things it's often misdiagnosed as is BPD. So the purpose of making this video was basically to ask about your experience with this, about your experience with being a late diagnosed autistic, and I guess just to update you on what is going on. But I want to connect with kind of other people who have had similar experiences, like whether it's misdiagnosis, whether it's being a late diagnosed autistic, whether it's being an autistic girl, or something like. Does that make sense? Do I have to complete the sentence for you to get the whole idea, or can you just get the gist? Yeah, I've been filming this for ages, and I really wanted to make it an interesting video, but it's probably not going to be an interesting video. And I think part of that is because I haven't done the whole performy thing. I think the other thing, like, I've noticed recently, like, just researching autism and stuff like that, is like I feel kind of less ashamed of my need for help, because before I kind of judged myself and I would berate myself, like, why do I need assistance to do this? I am 26. Why do I struggle to do this? Like, I've been doing it all my life, but why can I still not do it? Why can I never do blah blah blah? I now put everything in perspective of realizing that I was an undiagnosed autistic living in a neurotypical world, or a world that's set up for neurotypical people, and it, for me, like, it kind of, my struggles and the things that have happened to me in life just make way more sense. I didn't think it did at first, but it does fit way better than BPD, and I don't really feel in doubt of what my assessment is going to say, and I don't think my therapist or my parents are in doubt of what my assessment is going to say given the research we've done. But that's another thing, like, self-diagnosis in the autism community is really widely accepted, it seems. But I still feel like a fraud. I feel like I'm just wearing a label that doesn't even belong to me yet. But I also feel like I need the label because I need some more help. I'm, like, scared of being judged. I think, for me, a lot of it is my own kind of stigma I've put on autism based on the stereotype I have thought about for so long, and I think a lot of that is based on autistic boys. And even just, like, realizing that, like, the other day I came to terms with the fact that if this isn't a mental health issue, if my struggles in life are rather than attributed to something like BPD, which, while is considered pervasive, you can remit, from what I understand, through therapy and DBT and changing your life. But if it's autism, it's always like, I'm always autistic. And that was just really mad. So yeah, I again would just like to hear from other people either going through similar things, or you know, if you just want to support me, I'm always here for some fucking, you know, support, because we could all do with more of that. But yeah, if you've kind of gone through the same thing, late diagnosis, misdiagnosis, just being an autistic girl, just being autistic, like being an autistic adult, like how do people do this? You know, like the thing I've been wondering lately is how single autistic adults operate, because it seems like it's a lot easier to be an autistic adult if you're in a relationship where your other half can kind of compensate for a lot of the things that aren't your strengths. But how do single autistic people manage? Because I find being single after being in a relationship for so long is a really different experience. And yeah, it would be great to hear how other people deal with that. But this video is really long now. Let me know if you want to see more content on autism and mental health and stuff like that. I'm not sure this video did exactly what I wanted it to do, but it is a documentation of my experience, and I will update you guys like as things move forward and I have an assessment and stuff like that, and as I kind of discover you know, what life is as knowing I'm autistic and how I can improve my life. Like, I would love to just create hacks for autistic people, but currently I have no hacks, so if you have hacks, leave those down below too. But yeah, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.